All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling what is really the ultimate engine room of the aquarium hobby, reef mineral systems. Look, if you're keeping demanding corals, you already know the stakes here. We aren't just, keeping water. We're running a massive, high-demand chemical balancing act to sustain a thriving artificial marine ecosystem right inside our homes. So let's get into it. So, how exactly do you keep a living coral reef thriving right there in your living room? Well, out in the wild, corals have an infinite, constantly replenishing water column. But in your living room, that water is finite. Every single day, your rapidly growing corals are actively stripping the water of its essential building blocks. You are the engine. You have to replace exactly what they consume, and you have to do it without missing a beat. Okay, let's dive into this. Alkalinity and calcium. We all know these are the absolutely non-negotiable essentials of reef keeping. Your corals are continuously pulling these exact two minerals from the water to build their rigid skeletal structures. But because of that constant, non-stop biological demand, these levels in your tank are perpetually dropping. It's basically a relentless race against their consumption.
And here is the major catch. You can't just, dump a bucket of minerals into the tank once a month and call it a day. Rapid swings in your water chemistry will absolutely stall coral growth, or worse, it could trigger a total tank crash. Chasing numbers is literally the enemy of progress here. Our primary goal always is unwavering stability. So let's look at the two main strategies hobbyists use to lock in that perfect balance.
First up, we have Solution A, two-part dosing, which is all about precision and microcontrol. So two-part dosing relies on a highly precise digital injection system. You basically have two completely separate, measured liquid solutions. An automated dosing pump delivers solution A, that's your calcium chloride, then a totally separate channel delivers solution B, your alkalinity buffer. By distributing these tiny micro doses throughout the day, you completely prevent those dangerous short-term fluctuations. But keep in mind, the burden of proof is still on you. Routine testing is absolutely required to match your dosing volume to exactly what your tank is eating that day.
Because your coral load and even your evaporation rates vary over time, your routine tests are eventually going to reveal a drift in your parameters. When that happens, adjustments have to be made gradually over several days. You never, ever want to make large sweeping changes to your pump schedules. Fine-tuning things slowly ensures you don't accidentally overshoot your targets and shock your sensitive livestock.
All right, moving on to our second method. Solution B, calcium reactors. Think of this as the ecosystem engine. If two-part dosing is digital micromanagement, a calcium reactor is much more of an organic, continuous ecosystem. It's essentially controlled alchemy. You have the sealed chamber, and it's filled with solid calcium carbonate media, which is basically just dead coral skeletons. You inject CO2, which lowers the pH and literally melts that solid rock back into a liquid form. It perfectly mimics natural oceanic decay. You have to balance that CO2 injection with the effluent flow rate, which is that mineral-rich water dripping back into your tank, all while keeping an eye on the media as it slowly dissolves over time.
Now you might be wondering, why even bother dealing with pressurized CO2 tanks and sealed chambers in your house? Well, because it allows you to deliver massive mineral demand over much longer periods without the headache of frequent manual dosing. While two-part requires you to constantly buy, mix, and swap out liquid jugs, a properly dialed-in calcium reactor can run completely hands-off for months at a time, providing this relentless, incredibly steady mineral drip.
Okay, so let's get to the showdown, comparing your two options head-to-head.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the hobby is clearly divided based on the size and demand of your specific setup. Two-part dosing is incredibly flexible, it's super quick to adjust, and it's highly scalable for smaller or mixed reef systems. Calcium reactors, on the flip side, offer unmatched long-run automation. Because they're melting down solid media, they are absolutely the heavyweight champions for mid to large reef systems where your alkalinity demand is just off the charts, and mixing liquid bottles every week would honestly become a part-time job.
But looking at this breakdown, it's pretty clear that neither system is some magic maintenance-free bullet. With two-part, your maintenance burden is constantly managing the liquid supply and keeping those dosing pumps perfectly calibrated. With a reactor, you're managing internal media levels, swapping CO2 regulators, and checking effluent lines. Chemically speaking, two-part allows you to independently tweak calcium or alkalinity if one of them goes out of whack. A reactor ties them together. It delivers a perfectly balanced output of both minerals simultaneously, which is great, unless you only need to adjust one.
Which brings us to the most important part of this explainer, the golden rule, achieving total tank stability.
Regardless of the method you ultimately choose, consistent testing prevents runaway parameters, period. High-tech pumps and sophisticated CO2 chambers do not replace you, the aquarist. Routine testing is literally the absolute only way to know if your multi-$100 hardware is actually doing its job, or if it's silently pushing your ecosystem toward a complete crash.
I love this point right here. For many aquarists, the practical question isn't which is best, but which is easiest to keep stable in your environment. That right there is the great "it depends" of the reef-keeping hobby. There really is no universal winner. If you excel at routine testing and you don't mind calibrating pumps, 2-part is absolutely your winner. But if you have a massive system and you'd much rather dial in a reactor and then step back for a few months, well then that is your path. It's entirely about what aligns best with your lifestyle.
So if you're thinking about changing your approach right now, run through this checklist before you go out and buy any gear. First, compare your current mineral consumption rates, like how hungry is your tank really? Second, honestly evaluate your testing schedule. Are you actually going to be diligent about it? Third, set a clear plan for your hardware calibration. And finally, confirm that your chosen method can actually hit your targets without causing those dangerous, large swings we talked about earlier.
Because at the end of the day, stability is the ultimate goal. These systems are just tools to help get you there. So look at your tank, look at your daily routine, and really ask yourself, which system is going to bring absolute, unwavering stability to your living reef? Choose the engine that fits your biology, and you will unlock the true potential of your ecosystem. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and happy reefing.